Welcome to the modules for the Administration Code Regulation 703 KAR 5:080. My name is Devin Avery, and I am a program consultant in the Office of Assessment and Accountability. This training must be completed prior to administering any state required assessments. Each section of the larger training has been broken down into training modules. Please review all 5 modules for the complete administration code training. Module 4 will discuss test preparation and student rewards, as well as the inclusion of special populations and alternate assessment. There will be some allegation prevention and best practices tips and a check for understanding at the end of the module. Test simulation practices are allowed under certain circumstances. Students should be familiar with using test taking strategies for assessments, such as those used in the classroom, direct formative assessments, etc., not just strategies for the use on state required assessments. Activities related to testing preparation should be planned to improve student learning, including analyzing student results, student feedback, and advancing instruction. Events for the sole purpose of raising test scores or practice with no feedback are not acceptable. Testing activities that provide feedback that benefit student learning are permitted and encouraged. Regular instruction must continue during the testing window, except during the test sessions, and the order of instruction should not be altered to match the order of content area test. Test prep courses, whether developed by teachers, districts, or commercially bought products, are acceptable as long as the results are used to identify student strengths and weaknesses and guide instruction. Good faith effort checklists may be used at any grade. The checklist expectations should be general, should not include any evaluative feedback, and should not contain requirements that will take away student ownership, such as requiring the use of a particular organizer or pre-writing strategy, requiring students to use scratch paper to show their work, specifying a certain number of paragraphs for a response, or spending a certain amount of time on the test. The checklist may consist of coming prepared for testing with a charged device, arriving on time, not disturbing others, using time wisely, and focusing on testing during the administration time. Please note, scanning student responses does not mean reading or skimming over the student work. It only means monitoring to be sure that students are actively working on the test. No feedback from the good faith effort checklist can be given to students until all testing is complete and materials have been returned to the BAC or DAC. The district or school can decide how to share the good faith effort checklist results based on completed testing. Results may be shared for a grade level at a school when all testing is completed for that grade level. Please note that negative consequences or punishments shall not be administered to students based on a perceived lack of effort during testing. A reward system may still be in place for good faith effort. A student could not earn a reward, and that is acceptable, but you cannot assign additional negative consequences to that student. For example, if the reward for good faith effort is extra recess, it is acceptable for a student to not earn that, but you may not take away more than the original reward as a consequence for not meeting expectations on the checklist. A student may not lose their regularly assigned recess or be required to walk during recess due to a perceived lack of good faith effort. The good faith effort checklist should not be rewarded after each individual session or day, and the results or rewards should not be made available to students before all testing is complete. With online testing, some currently used good faith effort checklists may require updates. Items included on the checklist may differ for online versus paper pencil testing. Using the checklist may require the teacher to mark the list as students are testing and they observe student behavior. Funding rewards for good faith effort checklists may come from various sources. The best source may be tangible donations from individuals, businesses, parents, or staff to provide student incentives. There are other regulations besides this administration code that apply to reward funding. When planning activities tied to assessment, refer to those regulations and procedures. One such regulation concerns the acceptance of donations and using school bank accounts following the Red Book rules. Monetary rewards, cash, gift certificates, etc., shall not be given to students based on test scores or as rewards for good faith effort during testing. It is not acceptable to use local school board funds or cash awards from school activity funds generated by students for student incentives or rewards to attend school during the testing window, participate in assessment activities, or perform well on state required assessments. Extended school services or ESS funds cannot be used for test preparation. Again, please consult your school or district financial staff for the policies in place for funding acceptable rewards. For online testing, the proctor will need to note the inappropriate content while monitoring, since they will not have access to the test responses once the student submits the answers. If you have questions about how to annotate an event, please contact your BAC or DAC. If a disciplinary problem exists, students may not modify their initial response. Have you heard the terms alert response or alert paper? It refers to the student writing or drawing about events that cause harm to themselves or others. While you are actively monitoring, if you should notice blatant evidence that a student is in danger, please contact your DAC, who will contact KDE for guidance. You still should not be reading or skimming student responses. If any concerning responses are discovered during scoring, KDE will contact DACs. The Administration Code regulation discusses inclusion of special populations on page 15. Anyone providing accommodations for students with IEPs, 504 plans, or PSPs needs to participate in annual training on the inclusion of special populations regulation 703 KAR 5:070 as well. Annual training is essential for staff to understand their role in providing accommodations and meeting regulatory requirements. Properly administered accommodations are intended to support students in earning valid and reliable test results and should never provide a testing advantage or automatically ensure proficient scores. A violation of the administration code does not necessarily violate the inclusion of special populations regulation. However, any violation of the inclusion regulation is automatically a violation of the administration code. Only a student who meets all of the eligibility requirements for the alternate assessment program as identified through the Admissions and Release Committee or ARC process may participate in that program. Administering the state required alternate assessment to a student who is not eligible is a violation of the Administration Code regulation. The alternate assessment program provides for some modifications to test materials and student response modes to ensure student ownership. Ownership means that the student actively and meaningfully engages with the assessment materials, questions, and responses. Any accommodation or modification should be individualized and allow for meaningful and authentic engagement. An accommodation should not remove or diminish the student's active participation. As mentioned previously in this training, materials may not be taken off-site for the purposes of modification. Working on alternate assessment materials after the completion deadline is prohibited. If a student does not use an accommodation or assistive device as a regular part of instruction, they should not use it during the alternate assessment. Anyone administering the alternate assessment components must complete required training specific to the assessment. Assessment components such as binders containing test items, field test thumb drives, student response sheets, etc., are considered secure test items and shall be kept in double locked storage while not being used for test administration. Just as with other state required assessments, altering results of alternate assessment components is prohibited. Some allegation prevention tips surrounding inclusion of special populations include providing the accommodations specified on a student plan. This includes enabling any necessary technology, checking for calculators if permitted, and being sure not to provide unspecified accommodations for students who do not have them marked on a plan. Additionally, make sure all assessments are administered in order. If a makeup session is required, consult the TAM for that assessment or contact KDE for guidance. Some state required assessments have additional required trainings. Please complete these trainings to avoid being in violation of the Administration Code regulation. Before administering the AKSA to a student, be sure that student is qualified for that assessment and it is reflected in the student IEP. It's now time for our fourth check for understanding. We will read through these yes or no questions and then discuss the answers. Question 1, is it acceptable to do test prep activities or scrimmage tests if no feedback is given or applied to future instruction? No, scrimmages, content review, and benchmark testing types of activity are only acceptable if results are used to guide further instruction and to identify and improve areas for growth. Question 2, is it acceptable for a good faith checklist to include efforts such as bringing a fully charged device, sitting quietly after finishing, and not using unapproved electronic devices? Yes, good faith checklists may include the efforts listed above. They may not require the use of specific strategies, answer lengths, or anything that would take away student ownership of assessment results. Question 3, is a violation of the inclusion of special populations regulation also a violation of the Administration Code regulation? The answer is yes. Violating the inclusion of special populations regulation while providing accommodations is also a violation of the Administration Code. Question 4, is there additional training required to administer alternate assessment components? Yes, it is required to complete and pass additional training requirements before administering alternate assessment components. This concludes Module 4. Please proceed through all 5 modules for the complete training. If you have any questions, please contact us at dacinfo@education.ky.gov or call 502-564-4394.